Part 6, Aristotle, the founder of various disciplines, How to Live in the Real World. Aristotle was a realist, as opposed to Plato's idealism. There is a lot of useful knowledge for us living in the real world. Part 1, Aristotle, the founder of various academic fields. Aristotle is a person who laid the foundations of various disciplines that are useful to us living in reality, such as biology, ethics, and political science, as well as philosophy. That is why he is called the ancestor of various disciplines. Aristotle had a scientific idea, so he emphasized what he could see and touch. Plato explained that there was true correctness in the ideal world, that is idea world, but we who live in the real world cannot see or hear the idea world. Aristotle thought that true correctness existed in the real world in which we live. He thought that the truth existed in the natural order, like the things in the high places falling down, the seeds blooming, the sun rising and setting. This way of thinking is understandable to us today, isn't it? We are creatures who want to believe in what we can actually see and touch. Plato's ideas were not so popular in ancient Greece, and Aristotle's ideas became common sense. Number 2, moderate, live in balance. Aristotle has left us a lot of useful knowledge to live in the real world. The idea of moderate is one of them. By the way, I love this way of thinking. Moderate simply means living in balance. For the sake of clarity, for example, look at the reality as well as the ideal, and value the negative as well as the positive. In my experience, it often goes wrong if you live in pursuit of your ideals. Believing that one should always be positive and acting that way can be tiring and can hurt others without even realizing it. I think it is of course important to pursue the ideal way of life as Socrates and Plato teach, but at the same time, it is also important to look at the real world in which we are actually living. Isn't moderate our best way to live? Number 3, thoughts. Thinking about the truth is the greatest happiness. Aristotle divided the way of life into 3 major parts. The first is a way of life that pursues pleasure, the second is a way of life that pursues status and honor, and the third is a way of life that pursues truth. I introduced the idea of moderate above, and he thought that too much pleasure would not make people happy, and too much demand for status and honor would not make people happy. He thought that the happiest way of life was the way of life that pursued the truth, which is the third way of life. This point is the same as Socrates and Plato. Of all animals, only humans can think with their heads. How should humans live? How is the world made up? He thought that the act of pursuing the truth about such things was the utmost happiness of human beings. Plato thought that there was truth in the idea world, and Aristotle thought that there was truth in the real world. They have different ideas, but it is the same that they are pursuing the truth. How should a person live? How is the world made up? Thinking about things like that can be said to be happy in itself. Do you agree with this idea? You would think that it is happier to satisfy pleasures such as appetite, libido, and sleep. Or you would be happy to get status, honor, and money. Do you think that? I don't think the way of life for pleasure and status is bad. First of all, please try to stick to that way of life. And enjoy the pleasures and status to the fullest. What do you feel after you have all the pleasures and status? I'm sure you will get tired of pleasure and status. At that time, it is good to try a way of life that pursues the truth, which is the third way of life. You will surely understand what Aristotle wanted to say.